Was anybody in here for the 9 a.m. session, Building DevOps Culture at Amazon? Yeah, a couple of hands. Really good session. Asif Khan came in and he talked about DevOps culture in Amazon and how we go and approach that. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about that, and then Chuck's going to dig into the Red Hat way as well. Title is Modern Application Delivery on AWS, the Red Hat way. Chuck will be joining up on stage after about the first 10 minutes, but starting off, if I can get the clicker to work, I'm going to talk about a principle we use in Amazon, and it's called the Andon Cord. Can I get a show of hands? Anybody familiar with the Andon Cord, if you know what this is? Not a lot of people. Okay, so it's a rope, actually, that was pioneered by Toyota on the assembly line, and it would actually hang down from the plant line, and anybody in this assembly line could pull the cord, and it would stop the entire assembly line. And this is a big thing, right? All the cars going through, the engineers and the line workers are building the cars and putting them together, and it would stop everything. And you would do this if there was a defect. So if they saw, a kink in, one of the pieces, or a component, or a dent, or a chip in the paint, whatever the case would be, and they'd come over and they'd fix it immediately right there on the line. The reason they would do this is to make sure the defect didn't make it down the line to the customer. So if you think about software development, right? You have tools in place that are kind of like this Andon Cord. We use this extensively in Amazon. If you were a shareholder back in 2012, you would have seen this letter. It's Jeff Bezos, our CEO's shareholder letter from 2012. And it's the first time where we start publicly talking about the Andon Cord and its use within Amazon. Here he starts off talking about Amazon and the principles of customer obsession. Another thing we're really big on. It's built into our DNA. It's not something we just throw in SEC filings or in taglines. For those of you that have worked with us, customer obsession is our number one goal and our priority with customers. For those of you just starting to work with us, really excited to work with you on customer obsession and show you how we do that. Jeff goes through and starts talking about an automated Andon Cord of sorts that we have in Amazon Prime Video. Here he's going through talking about our video on demand service. You can go and rent a movie for like $2.99 or whatever. And here we have a monitoring system that actually goes and detects that the video quality is bad. And then we just automatically refund customers when this happens. So if it looks like playback is choppy or wasn't up to that high bar that we expect, we just automatically refund people. And you'll see this in other areas in Amazon. So if you went on the retail site, we have a customer service Andon Cord, which he mentions here. So if there's a product that's defective or problematic, getting really bad reviews, we'll actually pull the Andon Cord on that and stop. We do this with our software development as well. Now, we don't actually have a cord, in the Amazon offices we pull. A couple engineering teams might, but it's more of an idea of the Andon Cord. And we use this to actually help with our velocity and our delivery. And it seems a little counterintuitive that doing a full stop will actually help accelerate. But what we find is we get those bugs and defects earlier in the line, we do the full stop, correct them, and they don't get into your hands. And that's what's really important. If you go back to 2012, where this acceleration you can see happening, 159 new features and services for AWS that year. It's pretty impressive, fast velocity for services. I think the number right now we're at for this year is 730 new services and features that we've already launched just this year. If you went and looked at last year, it was 1,430 new services and features. This Andon Cord, this idea that we're doing to stop bugs and defects, is a big part of our velocity in software development. And you can see other things, where he goes and talks about, again, the customer obsession and service going forward. And how we really want to get customers to say, wow. That's something I hope we can get all of you to do, say wow at some point. There's something we're doing that's great and helping you out and helping your mission, your companies, your government agencies, higher ed institutions. We really want to get you guys to say wow. And a big part of that is your feedback. So we want to know that. So we at Amazon, we're all empowered to go and pull this Andon Cord. Every person that works there. And then you as customers have that ability too. We want to hear from you. So if you see a problem, good, anything good, bad, let us know. We want to take that feedback and we put that back into our products. Services like Lambda, API Gateway, those are actually developed directly from customer feedback. Over 80% of our roadmap comes from the feedback you guys are giving us. We want that feedback and we want that conversation to happen. We don't operate at like a lot of the traditional IT vendors out there where, you give us feedback and then maybe 6 months later it might show up or it might not. Like, these are going in weeks when you have these feature requests. It's a really important part of our culture. So I want to hear about what your Andon Cord is. We're going to continue the conversation on Twitter. Let us know, what are you doing or what do you think? What are some of the tools that you can be using today? I'm going to bring Chuck up on stage now.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. All right, so first of all, who in here are developers? Raise your hand. It's a lot. Who are operators? Who are security folks? Everybody raise their hand. Come on, come on. We all care about that, right? So I always ask that to figure out the litmus test of the room, kind of where we are. But we're going to talk a bit about like the Andon Cord that we use for software delivery. And in fact, modern software delivery. If you read the description of this session, there was a lot of things like, have you tried all these things and they're just not working? Like you try containers, et cetera. So with that, I'll dive right in. We have a lot of customers, and I work with a lot of customers across all public sector and some commercial, where we have the prehistoric Iceman, or prehistoric caveman IT manager who says, we need to modernize. We are very legacy. And what we're going to do, we're going to adopt a bunch of DevOps-y things. We're going to rub some DevOps-y things on it, like containers or what have you, to solve all of our problems. And so they'll say, hey, sell me some containers. I've said no, although I have been guilty of it in the past. But remember, containers are not enough, right? A lot of folks think that containers are some sort of silver bullet that you can rub on. You rub some containers on a dev problem, or rub some containers on a storage problem, or rub some container on a DevOps problem, what have you. It's just not enough. I've been guilty of talking about containers a lot. In fact, this actually happened. I talked about containers so much on Twitter that Tupperware started following me. And so all my friends think I'm a Tupperware salesman. But one of the reasons why containers are not enough, because really, if you have a big, stinky, steaming pile of bad code, and you put that big, stinking pile of bad code in a container, you really haven't solved anything, right? It might even leak out. So containers are not enough. But 3 years ago, that's maybe what people wanted to buy. That was the stomach for. But it wasn't. And then something else happened, the Kubernetes revolution. Who in here heard about Kubernetes? Whoa. All right, awesome. So I've been doing Kubernetes for the government since it was a thing. Feather in my hat, I think I actually was part of the very first Red Hat Kubernetes implementation anywhere in the government. So that was enough back then. But no, still, I just won't sell you Kubernetes. Why? Because Kubernetes was never meant to be the top layer level of abstraction. It's a really great component. It's a really great implementation tool to manage containers at scale. If you don't know who these folks are, this is Brendan Burns, one of the Kubernetes founders, now at Microsoft, talking to Gabriel Monroy, who at the time was the CTO of Deis, who actually runs the Helm package manager. They're now both at Microsoft. And it was simply this big Twitter conversation, and I think some media articles wrote about it, like folks just doing Kubernetes in the raw, right? DIY Kubernetes. It just wasn't enough. So then that's where folks would come in and understand that and say, sell me some OpenShift. OpenShift is our product, which is abstraction, productivity level layer abstraction on top of on top of Kubernetes that allows you to actually be productive. And it's important to understand, because if you look at large scale applications, we all know that one container is useless. Many containers are hard. And by the way, I'm sure you've seen this container. According to the container Kubernetes union I belong to, I'm required to put this in every one of my decks. And OpenShift makes hard easy. And that's working really well, right? We actually help customers adopt containerization to implement all these DevOps-y things and make it usable and productive. So yes, I will sell you some OpenShift, but not by itself. And why? Because app platforms are not enough. If you just deploy some containerized app platform, you get an empty container ship. And and the reason why is that a lot of these app platforms were delivered in a build it and they will come mentality. It does not happen. I call it the platform of broken dreams, or the field of broken platform dreams or something. It just doesn't work. And so why is that? There's a lot of reasons, but the one I'll focus on, because again, I brought up my Tupperware, because I'm a Tupperware salesman now, is that the UX between, if you look at history, the UX between bare metal to virtual machines didn't change that much. You still interacted with the OS and your middleware libraries, et cetera, and how you deploy applications pretty much the same way. A lot of folks then would think, okay, well, the evolution of a VM is a container. That's not true at all. The UX changes immensely, and it changes the way you build and deploy software. One example of this is that containers actually allow us to have much better, broader, or specific separation of concerns of what developers are supposed to be doing versus what operators are supposed to be doing. You hear, who in here knows what DevOps is? Everybody heard of DevOps, right? Okay. So I bet you if I ask everyone in this room what DevOps means to them and what it does, they give me different answers. And one of the answers I get, DevOps is actually leveraging containers and bringing developers and operators closer together to sing kumbaya around some campfire. No, actually, it's not. Containerization actually separates them so that you can focus on, developers can focus on writing really awesome code, and operators can focus on operating really awesome infrastructure for that code. I've been a developer before. I've managed development teams. I've had admin God privileges on production boxes and worn a pager and had to fix stuff in the middle of the night on a Christmas day because something went down. I was the only one who knew how to do it, right? Containers, the promise of that is to get rid of that from happening. But there's something you have to understand about that. Why do developers love containers? Because it gives them God mode. They can put whatever the heck they want in those darn containers and just give it to operators. That was the promise of containers, right? And then operators love containers because it gives them a homogeneous way to maintain all of that. But in actuality, what it is, it's a big steaming pile of code, usually on kind of unsafe, because it's game gene. Really, in truth, containers promote bad behavior. Containers in the raw promote bad behavior. If a developer is just shipping containers instead of focusing on shipping apps, that's a problem. And then the operators have to deal with it. They have to deal with all the stuff that's in these bad things. So then the operators get scared. At scale, they run into containerization issues because they don't know what the heck's in them, right? This is actually some customs officials looking into a container. I found this on Open Wikimedia, right? And they're verifying that what's in that container is sugar, not cocaine. In a lot of cases, it's actually something pretty bad, right? At raw, at scale. And actually, at scale, it gets really bad. This is actually a customs border crossing where they're trying to get through. I actually made this myself. I'm also a Photoshop master, as you can see, replacing cars with containers. And it slows to a trickle, which then provides that empty, or is what is causing those empty container ships, right? That blocks you from doing what we call the 4 R's. Actually, this is one of my buddies over at Accenture came up with this, but I use it as my own now. The 4 R's to deliver applications is delivering apps reliably, which means they meet requirements, they're safe, they're secure. That's only good if you can do that repeatedly because requirements do change. Rapidly, because what you deliver if the requirement is no longer valid doesn't make any sense, and with a good ROI. Where's the ROI on an empty container ship? Where's the ROI on an empty platform? It's not there. So we've got to do it better, right? So stop, pull the Andon cord right now, right? Got to pull the Andon cord if you're doing it that way. If you're messing with containers in the raw, there's no structure. What I mean by no structure is the promise of containerization of the DevOps movement was to move really, really fast. If OpenShift, our application platform, is a Ferrari, would you drive your Ferrari down a dirt road? No, most people wouldn't, right? You drive your Ferrari at 200 miles per hour down the Autobahn. You want guardrails to protect you and your passengers. You want lane markers. You want order to the chaos to deliver apps with the 4 R's principles, right? On-ramps, off-ramps, police, whatever, everything that make you safe, to keep you safe and moving really, really fast. How do you do that? That boils down to methods, processes, and tools. This is totally cliche, but it's really, really important to talk about. So when I talk about methods and processes and tools that you need to adopt to move very quickly on a containerized app platform like OpenShift, there's 2 components of it. I call it MAD, Modern Application Delivery. Modern application is made of 2 things, modern application development, modern application deployment. Modern application development is your CI. That is leveraging next best of breed patterns and practices and frameworks. It's also doing things like TDD, behavior-driven development. It's also guaranteeing that your code is covered by test cases. You're validating the requirements. That's how you move fast. And then what do you do with that code? Well, then that's the CD part, right? How do you deploy it in a modern fashion so day 2 operations are really easy, right? That's the deployment into a containerized platform. A lot of folks will do one, but not the other. And a lot of companies or vendors out there will do one and not the other. There's a lot of companies out there that have built a market around lift and shift containers, right? Doesn't work, right? You haven't moved the needle far enough. You might get some operational efficiencies, but it doesn't work. The other ones have just focus on really awesome development. What do you do when you get the app out there? The hardest part about deploying software for an organization is day two forward. And remember, software is like mowing your lawn. Once you start mowing, the grass grows again. It's never done, right? So also, when I say get mad, so if you're sad, which is sucky application delivery, get mad. That's what you need to do in your organization, is adopt both of those principles. And the way that it has enabled this at scale is something we call the trusted software supply chain. What's a supply chain, right? I go back to the automotive industry, right? Supply chain is starting with quality parts to assemble them as something that's useful. And those quality parts are something that has been vetted, they're safe, they're secure, right? They're not all the stuff that's in Docker, or I'm sorry, they're not custom, right? Because prior to, in the automotive industry especially, prior to 1913, all automobiles were built by custom coach builders for the most part. It was custom parts, custom assembly, the car came out, was not reliable or you could not do it repeatable, right? And heck, it wasn't fast. And Ford invented the assembly line. So we need to bring in a modernization factory type assembly line concept to software. And in our world, we start with trusted bits. Who in here wants to write their own array in C#? No, right? You leverage trusted bits from an open source community, or even proprietary for that matter, because you have a company that stands behind and says, these are safe for you to assemble. If you've ever read the Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, he talks about never pass defects to downstream down to downstream work streams, right? That is simply this. It starts here. Start very far on the left with good parts. Start with trusted bits, put them together, and then what you end up with is some really quality software. What that looks like in the world, if you think about factories, right? If OpenShift is an assembly line, you need a place to put it, and that's Amazon, right? And you need assemblers, a lot of tools, a lot of these DevOps toolchain tools to actually validate and verify that what you built actually works, right? In practice, oh gosh, the formatting is a little off. So we're going to have to use a little bit of imagination here, because what you're doing is you're forcing developers through a pipeline that actually makes sense to validate the 4 Rs, all the while providing enough metadata to the change control board at a level of transparency and depth that they've never had before to rapidly get an ATO. At the same time, providing metadata back to the requirement that actually shows, hey, this requirement, this has fulfilled, has been tested. The code quality is good. There's nothing unsecure about it. It's been integration tested so we didn't break anything else. It's been QA and UAT. All automated. This is called automated provenance, right? Provenance is traceability to the origin. And while that's happening, because we have that traceability, guess what? Everything that you created through the OpenShift software factory, through the trusted software supply chain, is in fact now a new trusted part for reusability across your organization, right? That's critical to moving fast. Do not reinvent the wheel, right? And remember I said automated provenance, it's critical. If you do not have automated provenance, there is no trust. You thought managing 7 monolithic servers in production was rough? Try managing 70,000 containers in production. We have customers that do that, even more so, right? It's tough. You need a good structure to do that, right? And I bring up, as a development manager, I had like standing orders with my team, right? I did not have the tools to enforce it, but I had standing orders with the team, and that was that they would check in their code, they would do their test, they'd send me the test report, then they'd deploy in the dev box if everything was green. You know what happened? What do you think happened? They check their code in, they may or may not test it. I would never get the test report, and then it gets pushed in the test box. This kind of methods and processes that we're talking about here enforces good behavior. And by leveraging these methods and process, what we're able to do now is actually adopt a culture of concentrating on business results rather than technical detail. That is my definition of DevOps, right? That is so that a developer can be a really good developer and just know that when their code is checked in, it is safe and secure and validated to do what exactly it was supposed to do. Stop worrying about all the other stuff, while super important, but the developer shouldn't have to worry about it, right? So no more cheaters, no more game genie, no more guys putting where the heck you want inside a container, right? No more of this, no more downloading images from Docker Hub that have crypto backdoors in them. I mean, that's just last week, right? You need trusted parts. You get it from Red Hat, you get it from trusted vendors, et cetera, and you force your development teams to do it. And I get it. Some of the developers are like, oh my gosh, Chuck, you're taking away my God mode. Well, you never should have had it in the first place. And that's what brings up something else. So when we talk about developers, right? Dev Alpha Ops. I don't think anybody's ever heard of this. This is actually a concept I talk about when we're working with developers to actually ensure the team is structured to do something like this. And that is that there's 3 different kinds of developers on your team. Because some developers actually do mess with raw containers, right? We have standard developers, we have alpha developers, we have hipster developers. So the developers in the room, I hope like when you walk out of here, you'll actually kind of understand and figure out like which one you are. Standard, they're the majority. They're the 9 to 5 coders, right? Those are the ones, they just want to get it done. They don't really care about the nice new shiny things every day, right? They don't want to be told what to do. They want to say, hey, here's a requirement, go solve it. They don't really care about containers, or they shouldn't. Container to them is just an implementation detail. And they make up your schedulable capacity, right? So remember, when you're planning as a development manager, you need to know like how much time or how long it'll take with the capacity that you have, and that's how you make them with standard developers. They're not alphas. Alpha, there's very few of them in your organization. Probably most of the people in this room, if you're at this conference, most likely are in fact an alpha developer, right? There's fewer of them. They lead and influence. But one thing they understand really well is that the shortened time to value, right? And want the tools to shorten time to value, right? They're almost like developers with MBAs in a lot of ways, right? So you shorten time, and so they like the shiny things, but they don't just adopt and move forward for the sake of moving forward. They help the standard developers, but they're not actually like adding to your schedulable capacity. They're guiding the right way. They're the ones building those pipelines, building the process, the methods and processes, and helping to enforce them on the platform like OpenShift. Then you have your hipsters. There's even fewer of these guys. I don't think my genes are super skinny, but I'm probably somewhere between an alpha and a hipster. They always want the latest tech, no matter the time to value it adds. They love shiny things, and they want to use shiny things just for the sake of using shiny things. They're looking to get the organization move forward always. They're not schedulable, but they do a really good job of keeping the alphas informed of the nice new shiny things, right? Because the alphas are more concerned about getting work done, right, with the standards. All 3 of the types of developers, they exist in almost any organization, and they all are critically important. And it's not a hierarchy either. A standard developer is every bit as important as an alpha, as every bit important as a hipster. And also, it's not a promotion path either. You don't get promoted, or you don't have to be promoted from standard to alpha to hipster, although generally you start as a standard originally. One thing I did learn early in my career was not everybody wants to be an alpha. There are developers who just want to sit and get their work done, which is awesome because those are the guys that are the cogs in the machine that actually move you forward and move you forward at speed. So to summarize, standards give the long-term use and building. Alphas enable the adoption, right, and shorten that time to value, and the hipsters make the buzz about it. Bring it all together. So this is my emoji slide. I had to create these because there's no nerd with the construction hat on. So how does this all work? How does this come together? Well, for one, your business owners have some kind of requirement. They give to the standards, and the standards is being a development team. Well, as developers, we know that to get work done, we need a couple things. Oh, no, that happened too. That should be like that. You need tools, right? No one's writing their own array, right? And tools are what separates, man from beast. And you need a place to put it, right? So they need an environment, and that's what they request from operations, right? But ops just can't give them an environment because otherwise they're going to download whatever the heck they want off of Docker Hub, roll their own container, and just give it to them. That doesn't stop the flaming container ship. So what operators have to do? Well, they have to define policy of how it should look. What is the security posture of and the controls that we must adhere to so we can move fast, right? They send that to the alphas, though. They don't load up the standards, though. The standards actually shouldn't care. They just care enough to know that the platform they're about to go into is safe, secure, and controllable, and they can move fast in it, right? So alphas take that policy, and they do a couple things based off of the shiny things the hipsters are informed about. One, they implement policy back to the operations, so this is back to the cluster in the forms of CI/CD pipelines and quality gates and things like that, that you keep your developers safe, your standard developers safe, so they can move forward and quickly. They're the ones that establish that. They provide, it says supply tools, so then supplying tools to the standards so they can actually get their work done. These are libraries that are safe. I mean, if you ever looked at like a BOM of the RPMs of some of our middleware, like what is in it, they supply all those tools. They ensure that this is safe to use. Because if it's not, it will get detected further down the work stream, and as we say, we don't want to pass defects down. So they give the standards the tools that they need, to get the job done. When those two things happen, there we go, the operators now feel confident enough that they're going to get high-quality software that meets their policies, and they're able to supply an environment to the standards, right? And then at the same time, the alphas are providing feedback to the hipsters to say what worked, what doesn't, what other things do I need. And now the standards can get to work and actually provide business results. Remember, business results more than tech details here. OpenShift is what our application platform is what enforces all of that. It forces the good behavior and prohibits the bad. Because if a standard is attempting to use a tool that doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. It just can't. It was never given by the alpha. All at the same time, is the developer going to try to go around and not use a CI/CD pipeline? No. Why? Because the operator should have set up with the alphas and forced a real process, right? And that was my challenge that I had when I was managing those dev teams, right? I wanted the test report at the end of every night before it was deployed to a box. I didn't have the tools to automate. I didn't have the tools to enforce good behavior. So a lot of folks are like, well, Chuck, okay, so under your definition of DevOps being concentrating on business results rather than tech detail, that's nothing new. We've always wanted to do that. The trick is that it wasn't as ubiquitous or easy to adopt. It used to be that you had to be this high to DevOps or this tall to DevOps. Now you just have to be this tall to DevOps because it's out there. It's easier to do. And then that prevents you from doing stuff like this, right? So to summarize this and how these teams work together, and I think we're going to have a lot of time left too, methods and processes are really important, okay? They're every bit as important. Your development pipeline, the way that you get code out is extremely important. You got to start with that. But tools keep people honest, tools like OpenShift, right? Enforcing those policies. The tools that exist in Amazon do the same, right? And when you're keeping people honest, those tools are changing the behavior of your development team. And a lot of respect, your operators is too, because they're operating in a new way. Behavior changes culture. Why is that important? Well, because you must change culture to adopt DevOps. And remember I said earlier that my definition, the cultural aspect of concentrating on business results rather than technical detail. And that brings it all together. And remember, developers are in fact doers, but developers need structure to do it right and to do it fast, okay? Not in the raw. If you want to learn more about OpenShift, learn at OpenShift.com or answer QA. You can see me outside there. And lastly, I'll leave it with no more cheaters. We want to stop folks from cheating in development. We really want them to operate quickly, right, on those boundaries. So we have a lot of time for QA.
If anybody has questions they'd like to go through, we have microphones up here on the sides. If you have questions, you want to come up. And Chuck and I are going to stick around for the next 10 minutes as well outside if you want to come up and have a one-on-one. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.